one of the areas that executive functioning skills are really important for is to sustain attention and to filter out distractions from the world around us in order to stay focused to complete a goal. They're also really important for helping to plan and organize information. They're important for strategy generation and problem solving. We see that they're also important for being able to initiate and get started on tasks, as well as to complete tasks in an efficient way too. We also know that executive functions can help us with remembering information and bringing information to mind very easily. They're also really important for being able to shift our attention from one activity or one thing to the next. And so we often see that children that struggle with transitioning often have difficulties with executive functioning. It's hard for them to move freely and adapt from one situation to the next, or move from a preferred activity to a non-preferred activity. We also see that executive functioning is really important for both behavioral and emotion regulation, which often doesn't get as much attention. In reading, we know that executive functions such as working memory help us to keep ideas in our mind while we're reading through a story. And so these skills play a really important role in reading comprehension. For writing, we know that executive functions, again, like working memory, help us to remember things like spelling patterns and grammar rules and certain words that we want to put together and organize to communicate and put down on paper. So we know that executive functioning helps us to get our thoughts on our mind down onto paper, which is one of the things that kids who have executive functioning difficulties, especially around writing, tend to struggle with. And in math, we know that executive functioning can help with multi-step problem solving. When you have to follow a sequence of steps to get at your goal, executive functioning can help to get through those steps and to remember all the information that you need to problem solve. We know that executive functions actually start developing very early on in life, even into infancy. So young children and infants as early as 7 months old, we start to see the emergence of some rudimentary executive functions like selective attention and joint attention. And those things carry through into early school years, into preschool and early elementary school. So we can actually start to see in some children who have difficulty delaying gratification or controlling their impulses or following multi-step instructions or planning ahead a little bit, even in those early school years. If we see those difficulties, we can tell that a child might have some difficulty with executive functioning quite early on. We tend to see that for the most part, especially in my clinical practice, we tend to see that some of those executive functioning difficulties come up more in the school age years, when the demands in school start to ramp up and kids are required to do more things on their own and do things more independently, and when they're assigned tasks that require more organization, more planning as well. And so we often see, especially in that transition to middle school, when there's a lot more independence, you're moving across multiple different classes, you have many different teachers, the amount of homework increases often. That's also when we see another point when individuals that have executive functioning difficulties, those things might come more to the attention of parents and teachers. Functions continue to build throughout childhood and adolescence, and they actually don't stop developing until our mid-20s. And so we continue to see growth of executive functioning skills into those adult years. And so what we tend to see is that kids and teenagers that have executive functioning difficulties may never completely outgrow these challenges, but they might look different at different time points in their development. And it's also why it's important that we provide intervention and strategies to these individuals from an early age so that they can better manage those different developmental shifts and keep up with the demands of their environment around them. We find that individuals that have executive functioning difficulties, they don't pick up on these skills naturally just through osmosis. They really need very explicit instruction in these skills in order to be effective. So oftentimes we see that breaking things down for them, being able to provide a lot of structure, and also to continue to teach these things over and over with a lot of practice. It's like learning any new skill. It requires a lot of practice on a pretty consistent basis. Those are definitely ways to continue to support executive functioning skills.